Hey folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's Tools, Tips, and Talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. In today's episode, I'm going to cover grinding basics. I haven't done grinding basics in a while, so I figured I would take you guys through ways to make your grinds better. And if you're just starting out, this is a video you want to watch. So before we get into grinding, let's talk about grinders. So many of you know I have a Brodbeck grinder. Love that grinder. Have just about every attachment they make for it. Big fan. Okay, but I wanted a second grinder in the shop. I'm starting to teach more classes, so I kind of need a second grinder. Plus, it'd be nice just to have two grinders, one each set up in different ways. So this time I actually decided to talk to my buddy Brian at housemade.us and go get a Revolution grinder. The Revolution grinder is a kit that you buy. You do need to know how to weld, but it has a very good price point because you have to weld it together yourself. So it's an interesting one for the DIYers out there that want to build one yourself. So I'll take you a bit through the building of that grinder, and then we'll get into grinding basics. Let's take a look. So I got all the parts on the cart here. This is actually the cart that the grinder is going to stand on, and it's going to get wheeled over there, but I figured I'd leave all the parts here, and then over here, that you guys are going to see in a sec, is my welding table, so it's going to get fabricated here. I also have Brian's video set up on my phone so I can do it step by step. Let's get into it. I'm not going to take you through every part of this build, but I will show you some highlights. It starts by putting the two risers in the holes in the base. And this, folks, is the longest part, the part you need to spend the most time on. Because if you screw this part up, everything else will go wrong. And even with all those cautions, and watching the video a few times, I still managed to screw it up. Here's screw up number one. Oh, I managed to get the risers in the wrong spots. That hole is supposed to be on the outside. After cutting the welds, grinding them off, I managed to get this together. Let's move on to the next part. Now we're going to weld together the receivers that are going to hold the tool arms. This part's pretty simple. Then we'll move on to the tracking assembly, and then we weld on the motor plate. And that's where screw up number two happens. Here we go, folks. Do you see it? Do you see the problem? Yeah, I put the motor plate on the wrong side, and I don't notice it for quite a while. Well, folks, do you see a problem with this? The problem is I have it going the wrong way. Yes, I completely screwed up this build, and I put the engine plate on the wrong side. It's supposed to go on this side. So that's a problem. Would it work? Yeah, maybe. I could have the belt on this side. It would just feel really weird. So I reached out to Brian, told him I completely screwed it up, and he was nice enough to send me two new receivers, a new engine mount, and a couple of these because I probably won't be able to get these off. These are plug welded here. So guys, when you're doing this project, the Revolution, pay attention, double, triple check before you go and put the full welds on here. These welds are not a problem. It's the plug welds that I'll never get off. So massive screw up on my part. I'm embarrassed, but it is what it is. Now let's do it right. Well, folks, there it is, all completed. The grinder runs great, tracks great. I'll show you a little more of it in a little bit. But the one thing I want to do is I have it on this Harbor Freight cart, even with the wheels locked. The problem is it's kind of rickety. So let's make a stand for it. So to make this stand, we're going to be using 3-inch square tube. I've got a 10-inch plate that I've just drilled holes to match the mounts. And then I just bought some 1/4-inch, 3-inch plate, bar, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to put these like this. Okay, that'll all get welded together. I've got these for these casters, and these are really great casters. I've used those on my other grinder. You can jack these up so the wheels aren't touching, and they're really, really solid. So good deal. And I'll put links to these down in the description if you want to get some. But then I'll just weld these underneath, weld it all up, put the plate on top, and we should be good. So let's weld it up. So here's the completed grinder on its stand. It's nice and sturdy now. It doesn't move. So let me just take you through some of the quick options on here. Like like most grinders these days, it does go horizontal. You can switch the rest. You know, it's pretty typical. Comparing to the Brodbeck, they're pretty much feature-wise pretty much identical. Yeah, no real major difference. The tracking on this one, I do like the tracking on the Revolution. It's got some cool features. So now that I've got it all set up, let's talk about grinding basics. I'm going to take a little break and do a mail call here. I got this from Austin at High Caliber Craftsman with a note. Thank you for the inspiring and educational content. Hope you enjoy the Scribe. Austin knows that I love Scribes, one of my favorite tools. So I have this nice weighty brass Scribe. So very, very cool. Thank you so much, Austin. I will put this in my regular rotation. And if you want to get a hold of Austin, he does cool stuff with wood and all kinds of stuff. So go check him out here. Thanks, Austin. Okay, so let's talk about grinding basics. I've just got this piece of mild steel, kind of in a knife shape, kind of like a Wharncliffe shape. I've already put some layout fluid on it because the very first thing you need to do is have layout lines. Have scribe lines, a center line that you're going to grind to. Because if you don't, you won't know how much you're grinding off each side. So this is probably the most important part because you're kind of flying blind if you don't put lines. So for doing lines or scribing, I have two different scribes here. This one, which is pretty low tech, you just set the height of this thing and you mark the edge and then you flip it over, mark the edge. Unless you got it dead centered, you'll get two lines. Which is fine because a lot of people want to, because pre-heat treat you're going to be leaving a lot in the middle, so they might want to grind to each line. If you just want a line in the center, this kind of scribe is great. This one only does centers, so you kind of put it in and it centers itself, and then you'll see I got a line right down the center here. So I'll put links to both of these. I like them both for different reasons. Okay, so now let's go to the grinder and we'll talk about how we're going to get that bevel. Okay, so we're set up on our grinder. I've got my grinder set up relatively high because I'm a tall guy, so I like having it pretty high up. My arms are almost parallel and I find that easier. First, we're going to talk about posture. Okay, you don't want to be moving your arms and having your arms out like this. You really want to lock your arms against your side, and you're going to be moving your body more than moving your hands like this. That just makes for uneven because you don't want to be doing this against the plant and you want to keep the knife flat. We're going to be grinding with the edge up. Okay, and this, okay, our edge is at a slant, but that doesn't matter. And the theory here is just we're going to start and break this edge and put a little facet or a plane on this edge, okay, by breaking that edge. And I've got a used belt on here because when you do this, you tend to take all the abrasives off the belt. So always try to use a used belt when you first break that edge. And then we're going to just make this about a 1/4 inch and we'll get it a little bigger. And we're just trying to set that bevel, and it's usually you're going to do this at about a, 30-degree angle, even a 45, usually about a 35-degree angle, a 30-35. So let's set that bevel first, and then we'll go on to the next step. So we managed to get a nice flat bevel here. Okay, and sometimes, you might come at it a couple of different times, get a facet. That's fine. This is really the hardest part, is setting that bevel. And you want to make it so you're not at your line. Okay, so I'm still quite a ways, a 1/16 away from my line. And this is pretty thick stock, and I did that on purpose, so we have more meat to show you. But now it wants to stay. I can push my thumb, and you notice it stays on that flat spot, even if I'm not sitting on the rest. The reason I like to use the rest, and I teach people with the rest, it's a lot easier. You don't have to worry about this axis up and down and the blade jumping up and down. You're just worried about pressure this way and pulling this way. So let's talk about your hands. Okay, there's a push hand and a pull hand. Okay, this one, okay, the one that's pushing, the push hand is the one where all of the pressure towards the belt is going to happen. Don't try to apply pressure with this hand, because what's going to happen is you're going to press here and it's going to put a big divot on this end of the blade, or you're going to try to compensate and do it over here. This hand just pulls the blade. Okay, this hand does all the pushing. And you'll notice I've got my thumb out. Whether you use a thumb, or some people like to use, and I can't find it, a push stick, okay, a Teflon push stick, so it doesn't burn your thumb, because it does tend to burn your thumb after a while. Either way, but you want one point where you're going to apply pressure. Now, to move the bevel up the knife, all you're going to do, or when it's down, it's going to be down the knife, what you're going to do is just move your thumb or your push stick. And what that's going to do is it'll slightly change the angle of the knife. But you just move it down and all of a sudden your bevel will start to climb. It'll start to go up the knife because you're moving it, you're moving the bevel down. And if you need to now take more off at the edge, you're just going to move up. And then you're just going to keep that equal as you drag through. Make sure your distance from the edge is the same. So, and I'm going to show graphics in the corner to illustrate this. If it's here, you're just going to keep it there. And the further down you go, the more it'll climb. And you're just going to keep doing that and keep practicing until you get a bevel the way you want it. Okay, so that works pretty well. It's got a pretty even grind. I was doing it pretty quickly, and actually it's the very first time I've used a push stick, so I usually just use my finger. But came out pretty even. And I've got the belt hanging over here, so I've got a nice little curve. So that's the basics of grinding. Another thing that I didn't mention is when you're putting the knife up to the belt, a very, very important thing is to look down the belt. You don't see it, but I'm looking down the belt so I can see when it contacts the belt, so I don't accidentally go in too steep or not steep enough and start to take off the top here. So make sure you're looking down the belt. So that is basics of grinding. What I want to show you guys is an exciting attachment from the guys at Housemade. So we're going to go look at the True Tilt table, and that should make things even easier. And I've never used this attachment, not even once. So we're going to be learning together. Let's take a look. So this, folks, is the True Tilt table. Brent from Baldman Knife and Tool is one of the co-creators of this, along with Brian. So the theory on this one is you just have to take your blade, it's supported by the rest, and you're just going to move it across the belt like this. And because there's such a steep angle, or sorry, a shallow angle here, you can do your bevels just by sliding across the rest like this. So, and of course this won't work for everything, but for a lot of your grinds, this will be a really easy way. Certainly if you want to get started, this is a great way to do perfect bevels. Brent is an expert at this thing. I'm a total novice, so let's see how I do. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. My first go at it, I got a pretty good bevel. I mean, I got it a little jittery up here, but not too bad. And it was really easy to match the bevel to my one on the other side. So, yeah, I really like this attachment. I could see me using this for certain grinds or ones that I'm doing a lot of repetitive action. It's also nice when you're doing, like this is, okay, I picked this profile on purpose because it's got a very flat edge. If you were doing an edge like this, this can do these kind of radial grinds where you're turning the knife and you get really nice scratch marks because it kind of does these radial scratch marks. So some cool things, I like it. Hey folks, thanks for joining me on this grinding basics video. Also this introduction to my new Revolution grinder. Pretty happy with this machine. It's certainly going to help here in the shop. If you're just getting into knife making, you're considering a grinder, definitely consider going up to a 2x72. The price point on this one is pretty cheap, and if you're willing to get into welding and do some fabrication, it's a great grinder. If you just want to outright purchase a grinder, the Brodbeck is an excellent grinder. Both of these are excellent grinders, very comparable. I think I could switch back and forth to either one and they'd be identical performance. So really good machines. There'll be links to both of these down in the description if you want to get one. Also, I'll mention our sponsor, Maritime Knife Supply. If you're in Canada, they are a Brodbeck distributor. So you can get yourself a Brodbeck via Maritime Knife Supply. And if you need any other knife supplies, Maritime Knife Supply is your one-stop shop. Whether you're in US or Canada, you can shop in US or Canadian dollars. Thanks folks, we'll see you on the next one.